Keyan and I both really appreciate this book study. It's been awesome to hear y'all's unique perspective on it, as well as get some engaging dialogue and discussion in the industry go around it. I wrapped up Collabo session number 6 this morning on my drive over to Dallas to meet with Keyan. I'm actually in Keyan's office this morning, these little recording booths. So we probably need some further discussion on CPM versus last minor system.
Welcome to the EBFC show, the easier, better for construction podcast. I'm your host, Felipe Engineer-Manriquez. This show is all about the business of construction. Today's episode is sponsored by
Bosch Refine My Site is a cloud-based construction collaboration platform that applies lean principles to enable your entire team to plan, communicate, and execute in real time. It's the digital tool that works in tandem with your last planner system process and puts it all together in one simple, collaborative ecosystem. This easy-to-use platform is available in English, German, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, and can be used on desktops, tablets, and mobile devices. According to Spencer Easton, scheduling manager at Oakland Construction,
Refine My Site, in my opinion, is the best, leanest tool on the market for last planner system.
Here's what our users have to say. We've looked at 3 other digital scheduling platforms and none compare to the straightforward approach Refine My Site takes. From milestone planning all the way down to daily tasks, this program gives every general contractor and their trade partners meaningful collaboration, accountability, and KPIs. Register today to try Refine My Site for free for 60 days.
Today's episode is sponsored by Construction Accelerator.
The design and construction industries come up with and build great things, but we also build and waste in how we do those things, in our interactions, in our contracts, in our logistics. So what does this do for our bottom line or our next project? The best firms maximize their value by removing that waste and only doing what's essential to the work, what makes them money. Construction Accelerator will train you to see the waste and give your teams the lean tools and experience to remove it immediately. All online. Construction Accelerator is made up of 3 to 9 minute videos that can be watched again and again in the field, at the office, and at home, all broken down by topic. Need to learn pool planning? We have videos on the process, how to set up a room, and how to kick off a team. Need to set up a target value delivery project? We discuss all the aspects of TVD, especially cost. Or maybe you just need to brush up on 5S. Well, we have videos on that as well. You can download and print reference materials to use on site to immediately translate watching into doing. Subscribe today at trycanow.com. Let's build an industry, not just a project.
Today's show is also sponsored by the Lean Construction Institute. LCI is working to lead the building industry and transforming its practices and culture. Its vision is to create a healthy and thriving industry that delivers outstanding project outcomes every time for everyone. Check the show notes for more information. Now, to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Keyan Zandy and Joe Donarumo.
Morning, Felipe. Morning, Jesse.
Good morning.
What's going on, guys?
And we've got 2 very special guests with us. Keyan and Joe, authors of one of our most favorite lean, nonfiction, and fiction books. It does both. The Lean Builder. You got your book, Jesse? Where's your book at?
Boy,
Let's see that book. There you go.
Watch out.
Yeah.
Got it. Got to dust, I had to wipe some dust off, but it's
And you
here.
will notice that in my book, Joe and Keyan, there's first page is blank, waiting for your autograph. So I will start to travel with this book every time I come to Texas for the odd chance that I might be able to get you to put a signature on it.
Woo, baby. We're all from the construction industry, and there's a certain stigma that we have from, let's say, folks that aren't in our industry, and maybe expectations are a little lower of folks that are in construction than in other professions. And so I've been wondering, like, you guys going out on a limb to write a damn book about lean stuff is a pretty courageous step, because it's the first one. I mean, there's other lean construction books, but this is really about the application and a lot of the human side of applying the last planner system. What kind of nerves, what kind of anxiety or insecurities did y'all have as you were working through this?
Oh man, this is going to take like 20 minutes to answer that question.
And before you answer that question, I would love if each of you would say a little bit about yourself.
I'll get started. So I'm Joe Donarumo. I'm one of the co-authors of the Lean Builder book, which Jesse and Felipe have been doing these collabo sessions on. My day job, I'm a senior superintendent for a construction firm called Lindbeck. I work out of Fort Worth, Texas, and I primarily focus on healthcare construction. I also head up our Lean application within our company internally.
So I'm Keyan Zandy. I'm COO of Skiles Group. Skiles Group is a general contractor based in Dallas, Texas. We primarily focus on healthcare construction, but we do work in about 13 different states. And proud to known Joe for, Joe, how long has it been? Over 10 years now? I came into the industry early 2000s, started implementing last planner system in around 2004. And so I've been around it for a while and try to make it work so many ways and gain so much value over the years. But it was probably 2011 that I took the paper version of the last planner, which it used to be all, 2-week and 6-week and paper that we would pass around, and kind of just blew it up, made it visual. And that was really where the light bulb came off for me and a lot of the other superintendents I was working with at the time. We started transitioning from that weekly subcontractor meeting to a daily huddle meeting. The journey with the Lean Builder for me has been just years and years and years of getting it wrong, or having, on our blog, I joke, there's a blog me and Joe wrote, was like, if your last pull plan sucked, here's some tips. And it's because out of the 400 pull plans I've ever done, probably 250 of them sucked, That's what's so beautiful about all this, is there's just this journey. And so, for us to link up and to put this book together, and we poured everything we had into it from all those years, just in an effort to try to help people. So it's been pretty humbling.
I'm going to kind of dive into Jesse's question, because this is going to take a little bit to answer. So I think we kind of got to set the context of really what was in our hearts and in our guts for Keyan and I that actually got to the point of, why did we want to write a book? And then kind of our emotions and feelings and insecurities around it as we started to, get closer and closer to rolling it out and starting sampling amongst our peers. But, with Keyan and I's journey together, starting at Lindbeck, and then Keyan had a transition and made a move to Skiles Group, we were still finding ourselves traveling, going to LCI Congress, going to events, local COP events in DFW, and trying to find that right resource that we could, honestly, selfishly use even internally with our folks who were hungry, who were thirsty, who wanted more, how to help give them some type of a roadmap or some, practical steps of how to either improve on their lean journey or even, begin one, the right step. And we were struggling because there was so many good documents, publications, around lean and the tools and the methodologies. But the problem that we were seeing in the disconnect was that they were all education based. They were theoretical. They were white papers, which they all have their place. But the target audience, the demographic that we needed to deliver the information to, were the men and women putting that shit in place.
And Joe, sorry to pause you. You said that so eloquent, I got tired of finally convincing a superintendent or a peer to try implementing lean in the field, and they said, "Hey, well, how do I do it?" And then I hand them the Toyota way. That's layman's terms.
They're like, "This is all Japanese terms. How am I going to use this?" And I'm like,
And that's, I think, where so many people struggled. Not to catch you up to, because I want you to keep going down this path, but some of the bigger issues that we were seeing was I got frustrated with, in the current state, you couldn't scale this. I'm trying to say, and what me and Joe talked about is if you're working for a company that only does 30 million in revenue a year, there's got to be some type of system that they could pick up a book, understand how it works, and go. without any additional resources. Doesn't matter the level of skill set of that super, from being high tech to low tech, old school, new school, like to just get it. It didn't exist. And that was hard.
Yeah.
That was frustrating. Sorry, Joe. Keep going, man.
That was the gap, right? Like that was the missing link that we needed to bridge. And what's interesting is like I feel like we both kind of felt that in our gut for probably about 3 years, like leading up to the point where we actually began to write the book, because we were going to, an LCI Congress, and we were constantly like kind of searching around, looking for the right presentation or the right maybe champion or coach or someone who was like putting this together or assembling some type of a package like that we could deliver for, our own needs, with our own team, or to share within our local COP and help those around us. And then after 3 years of like feeling like we were continuing searching, like I remember this all goes back, I think I might even talked about this story with Felipe, one of the earlier podcasts. By coincidence, we happened to book like the same Southwest flight, like going out to Anaheim, California to, I think it was 2017, to the Congress in Anaheim. And, I see each other and, grab a seat, and we're sitting there talking, and we're talking about this exact subject right here. Like, man, maybe this is the conference, maybe this is the year, we're going to find something. And it was on that flight where we're sitting there talking like, well, why are we waiting? Like, we know the need, we know the demand, we know the audience. Let's just do it. This is like right off the top of the head, and we're looking around, and I did the pamphlet. I think I've told you about the pamphlet. Like, we pull up the 747 like safety pamphlet. And we're like, oh yeah, hell, okay, we'll just like step 1, daily huddle. Step 2, visual communication. Step 3, constraint. Step 4, and like we'll just put it in like this pamphlet, and they'll tuck it in their safety vest, and we'll give them a play-by-play of how to start. And that's really where the idea and the premise and where the whole thing really came together.
I had read some book. Obviously the Goal has been a great book that I've just always had in my collection. And then there's this book called Everything I Learned About Lean Manufacturing I learned from Joe's Garage. But when I read Lencioni's book, and I think Joe read it at the same time, he called me. He's like, "Man, we should do a book and write it like this." And at first I was like, "Man, I don't want to write a book."
That's work,
like,
man.
Come on, man. But just thinking through it, us talking about it, trying to map it out, and we figured if we were going to do it, that was going to be the way to do it. It was just important to us, and I don't want to turn anybody off to what I'm about to say, but there's something I felt that there's some consultants, coaches, not all, there's so many great ones, so don't misconstrue what I'm saying, but that have actually turned more teams off to lean.
10-4.
Either coming from just not a place of understanding of what we do, and never put on a pair of work boots, never been on a job site. And it was important to us that if we did this, like the builder's voice would be represented. It's very clear who this book's written for. I mean, this is for boots on the ground, or anybody on the project site could pick up the book and like immediately like begin to get some value on their projects just by slowly putting this stuff into place. And then after the book came out, very humbling, a lot of great feedback, but then people were like, man, it would have been awesome if there was some illustrations or some pictures or some things. And so that's kind of how the website and the blog came about. And so I was like, all right, you want to see like what it looks like, more detail. And so we've spent a lot of time just trying to break these concepts down further. That way, somebody learns about this, they do a Google search, something comes up written by builders, and it's just something that they can relate to.
Sounds like y'all came out of the gate just with 100% confidence and clear vision, no misgivings or second thoughts about embarking on that journey.
Yeah, I think Joe and I may suffer from something called overconfidence.
Okay.
Tell us more, Keyan.
Well, it's funny.
Yeah.
Funny that I'm telling this story, but
You tell the story. Are you talking about when you and Terry were on vacation?
yeah. So me and my wife, we took the kids to spring break, for the beach, and I just watched this Steve Harvey clip, and I don't know if you guys know Steve Harvey, and but he he does a Family Feud stuff, but I think he preaches too, and so sometimes he's got these clips he's preaching in the audience, and he's telling everybody like you got to know everybody's got a gift. You got to know what your gift is, and then you got to jump. Because if you don't jump, you'll never fulfill your gift. And so we had the kids to bed. We've had a couple cocktails, and me and my wife, my wife's a professional too. She's an executive at her firm, and we're talking about, what our gifts are, and have we jumped, or have you taken risks in your career? And she asked me point blank. She said, "Let me ask you something." She's like, "You and Joe are writing this book that they're going to hand out at the Lean Congress and at the AGC convention in front of all your peers and people that are experts in this and all these things, right?" And she said, "Has it ever crossed your mind once, like, what if it sucks? Like, are you not like extremely worried or have anxiety around that?" And like, I swear to God, like, that was the first time it ever crossed my mind. And so we determined that my gift was that I was just overconfident. But and when I shared that with Joe, like, I could just tell, like, that look on Joe's face. He's like, "Oh yeah, I guess that could be something."
Never even thought about it from like the quality. Like it was kind of playing with my mind. I was like, "Oh crap, this is really going to happen." Like we're about to give LCI 2,500 books. It's like, what if it does suck? Like, it never even came across our mind, and not from like a standpoint of not being humble or having humility around it. It's just like it never penetrated or permeated into our brain, because this was all literally what was in our heart for like the last 10 years around the pain and the frustration and the lessons learned. And it was literally just like verbal vomit as we're writing this, because it was all just right from here, like straight on, like right down onto the paper. And we never even gave it a second thought of, well, is this even good or not? Because we were just telling our heart story and the journey that we've been on and trying to help others relative to their own journey.
And I'll just say, like, people ask us a lot, like, well, how long did it take to write the book? Well, it took me my whole career to write the book. I mean, it's like, it's like, oh, it's nice to get some mailbox money or selling. It's like, yeah, but like, to get to that level of expertise, how many years of like sucking at this and like trying this and trying to get it to work and learning from so many different mentors and people in the industry, and just constantly being a student to get, for me and Joe to get to that level of expertise, to just, we're so proud to have something that we've been able to actually contribute back. Because I feel like what's so awesome about our community of us lean enthusiasts is like, we share so much. And so for so many years, like, I felt like I was just taking, it was like, I'm just taking, I'm learning from different people and different experiences, taking. And then finally you get to a level to where it's like, man, now I want to give back. Like, I've learned so much. Like, now how do I give back? And so it's been fun to get into that mode and really start sharing, and to have this, and like to have people tell them it's helped them and that kind of thing. I mean, it's pretty cool.
You guys have had an amazing experience, and I love that you came from your heart, and it started with massive frustration. I've actually read this book more than one time. That's how much I like this book.
Yeah.
How about you, Jesse? How many times have you been through it?
I've been through it, I guess, with you and I in the collabo session. That probably puts me at about 6 times. When I was reading it the first time, I was like, yeah, let me check. Joe's cool, Keyan, like, they're smart. Maybe it's good. And as I was reading, I'm like, holy hell, like, this is going to be a resource for a lot of damn people that are struggling. Like, I was with Turner at the time, and the way some of us approached the Last Planner system made it harder than it needed to be. And so I'm reading this, and I'm like, shit, man, like, yes, this is exactly right. I mean, for me, I'm like, took me back to when I was running Last Planner, or when we were running Last Planner system as a trade partner without the GC. Like, we were able to do it. We didn't get all caught up on all the bullshit. Like, we were just able to make achieve some level of flow. Right after that, we had teams all over the central United States that were like, hey, Jess, we want to do a study action team around the Lean Builder, or we want to start a study action team. What book do you recommend? And I'm like, well, shit, you got to do the Lean Builder. And then they're like, well, would you mind being a part of the team? I'm like, shit, yeah, let's do it. Because I did have to do some reconciliation between what was presented in the book and what was what the standard was as per Turner. And so just try to help.
Yeah, the Turner way.
You got it. You got to carry the flag. Whatever organization I work with, I'm going to carry the flag. But it was just kind of like, look, start here, but this is where we want to get to, but this is the best place to start. So there was no doubt that it was going to be a resource. And I mean, everywhere I go, now I'm with Lifetime with the construction department, and they don't know, but it's coming, baby. They're going to be buying some lead builder books. And for the L&M family out there listening, the young tradesman, the young engineer that's just getting out of university and kicking off their career, like, you guys are a phenomenal example of what can be accomplished by identifying a problem and taking action upon it. It may have taken 10 years, but that's where we're all at, right? Everybody's got an idea. It's inspiring, man. It's freaking amazing. Thank you.
Man. Appreciate that, Jesse. Yeah, it means a lot. Keyan and I actually had our launch party like the Tuesday night there downtown Fort Worth, the week of Congress, and still probably one of the best highlights of my career, being able to share that with Keyan and Terry and my wife Tasha, and just the journey over the past 2 years riding it and finally kind of coming to a culmination and launching it there at that Congress was something I'll never forget.
Yeah, you guys took some beautiful pictures. So for those of you listening, you have to go to the leanbuilder.com and look at those glorious photographs that Keyan and Joe have. Every time I look online and I see the pictures that you guys took, especially the ones at the bookstore, they are incredible.
Yeah. That's actually a bar.
Oh, that was a bar?
Where we were at.
That's called the library.
Yeah, you wouldn't find us in a bookstore, but you will find us in a bar.
So where is this library bar?
It's downtown Fort Worth. Yeah, it's like there's a little speakeasy, and you go in upstairs, and it looks like a library, and then there's a little speakeasy, kind of like a little bourbon bar under.
As we start talking about how we wrote these chapters and this and that, there's one chapter in particular where there was a lot of bourbon involved in the writing. I got to make sure I share that before we leave.
Yeah, go ahead, start sharing it.
Yeah,
we're getting close to the end of the book, and Joe and I are headed to AGC National Convention in Denver. Anyway, we got there early, and there's that Union Station in Denver, and there was just this nice little bar in Union Station. We start writing the PPC chapter, which is one of my favorite chapters of the book. We really wanted for like some type of story where people understand how Alan even got to where he was implementing this in the first place. And I was talking to Joe, I was like, we got to find some type of parable or something that people would know to tie back into this. And so, obviously, sharpening your axe or sharpening your saw is a thing, and there's things around that. And so the whole thing with him and his dad, and we're sitting there, we're typing and ordering and typing and ordering. And, my director of marketing who edited our book and is really, in a lot of ways, the third author of the book, she's just such an unbelievable writer and storyteller. And so me and Joe would just write and write and write, and we'd send it to her, and she'd craft and clean up and storytell. And she called me, and she's like, this chapter 7, like, we got to talk. She's like, you guys wrote this chapter? And I was thinking to myself, like, oh, geez, Joe, like, we probably did it too hard. Like,
here we go.
Yeah, this probably. And she was like, man, this is like the best chapter in the book. And so we're like, damn, we should have done the whole book like that. What have we been doing, So,
yeah.
But there's like a lot of, to me, the biggest thing that I'll remember that not a lot of people care about because the book is to teach people lean, but just the journey of writing it with Joe and just some of this is like both of us, just our journey combined of like what it's been like in this industry. And then to put it out and like to get feedback that like, this is my exact same journey. Unbelievable that in some ways, like we're still all living the same bad dream. You know what I mean? Like I remember a good friend of mine, Chris, who was with Turner, he said like, man, he's like, this thing gave me PTSD, it's like just going back because like just all the stuff along the way. And in our industry, that's what it is. We've just gotten so numb to the waste and the dysfunction and the long hours that like we can't even, it's hard to even elevate.
We've just accepted it for what it is.
And I can't applaud you guys enough. Like, I couldn't believe how well you read into that, just in the early chapters, like how, you couldn't have Alan just telling Sam what to do. Like, he had to fail through it. You know what I mean? You couldn't have Sam like he had to show his true colors at some point with the 2 schedules and the way he treated the architect, this and that, because prior to knowing anything about this, that's the way we're seasoned and conditioned coming into this industry. Yeah. And so it had to play out the way it did. I stand behind every way we did it. And I remember early on, like, some of the people, again, like when I call it builder's lean, like I think some folks may have had some problems with, like you guys said, like we don't talk about last planner system till more than halfway through the end of the book. And that's intentional. Like, you find, for me, some company that does not do daily huddles, that does a weekly 1.5-hour subcontractor meeting once a week, that has no culture of respecting trades. The trades have a culture of, hey, your project's a race. It's not a team sport. They've never been empowered to talk. All those kind of things that you guys hit on. Yeah, go try to do a pull plan session. Go try to teach last planner to that group. I love to see it. You know what I mean? And so, like, for us, it's like, and even when me and Joe do a workshop or try to teach this, like the whole first half, like we don't daily huddle, constraint boards, how to run an effective huddle, how to implement visual communication. And you know what? Like, if you could do that for a year, you'd be better off than where you are now. And then when people actually start to see the value, they start to get curious, now start implementing a little bit last planner.
And even just to go a little deeper, like it's just through the implementation of those simple tools that you even build the foundational culture on that job site that you have to have in the freaking first place of trust, accountability, and mutual respect to even go do last planner system. Do a daily huddle, be consistent, leverage visual communications, have the right discussions around the workflow, and make your constraints discussed and visual at the daily huddle to bring in team accountability. Like if you do that across all your projects and scale that across your enterprise, you're light years ahead of where you were.
If you're working for a large, progressive general contractor, like, in that type of environment, there is a lot, those firms are more adept and the people are more seasoned to go that route. There's 10,000 general contractors in our country. Like, forget about the bit of us that are involved in LCI and forget about the majority that only do 50 million, like 50 million or more a year. Like, if we're really trying to make this the standard in our industry, that's where I like to focus. There's so many other people focusing on, hey, let's do a simulation game with the team and let's do hey, that's great. I'm looking for that superintendent that is working 80 hours a week in some market where there's no community of practice, where, this is just trying to figure out a better way to do it. And that's what we're about. Like that's where we want to focus. And that's why we spend so much time talking about just even building the right culture. And that's why I was really laughing so hard at the podcast where, like, Jesse, you're like, you don't even know my name, fool. Like, for so many years, I would get so frustrated when I was in the field and like a fire sprinkler foreman and a ductwork foreman would come to me and be complaining about each other, but looking at me. And I'm like, are you talking about Dan, who's standing right here, who you've known on this job for the last 6 months? But then over time, it's like, well, no, you know what? He hasn't actually got to know Dan because Dan doesn't talk in the meeting because we only have one meeting a week. And in that meeting, we don't ask Dan to talk. And so it's like that. We could have done the whole book on that. And then the second book could have just been about last planner. And so I think that's kind of the mindset of, like, I think for the folks that are in the bigger firms that have internal processes, this and that, which I know the books help, and we're humble for that. But like, we're hoping to like change the industry with the kind of conversations you guys had in the earlier podcasts around those early chapters, because that's just the stigma in our industry. That's the conditioning in our industry. And that's got to fix. Otherwise, none of this other stuff's going to work. These tools won't work, just like Joe said.
You're right, Keyan. And Joe, you're right too. It's 2021, and I still go to construction projects every month. And in 2021, I've been to subcontractor, because that's what they call them, meetings. I call them trade partner meetings. And it's coming from those values and culture that we have that's a little bit different. And I think all of us on the call have a little bit different approach to it.
Sure.
And I've watched how often are questions asked of the trade leaders and how often are they encouraged to speak. And in a 2-hour meeting that I was at in the last 6 months, not 2 sentences, it was a lecture. It was a 2-hour lecture. So I think that for all the people listening that have this stigma with academia, the very same people that complain about they don't like school and they don't like it to be in school, you're creating a lecture environment on your job site when you don't ask for people's input. You have brilliant people working on your project. You've hired amazing, qualified companies and individuals. And when you don't ask and you think that you have to mastermind the whole thing, you're turning all those people off. And you will not be able to keep up with the complexity that is construction in this century. I'm super happy, and it's real. Like, as I read this, Jesse and I were getting triggered, like your friend Chris, Keyan, with PTSD. I mean, we were getting angry about things that had just happened like days ago when we were recording these sessions and I think it took us like half a year to record the book. So, and I totally agree with you, Joe. Like, it's got to be starting with the simple stuff. If you're out there and you're just like, Last Planner's too complicated, you're right. It's too complicated. And if you're out there and you think Last Planner is so simple and everybody should do it, you're right. But those two different people have different perspectives. And I love that in how this book, you can pick up and thumb into any chapter and just start with that thing right now.
When I go to a presentation or like when I'm at LCI, if I can listen to somebody talk for 30, 45 minutes and have at least 1 to 3 things that I can immediately take back and implement, man, I'm happy. Like, I judge all the presentations I go to by that alone. And it's so important for us too, like when we wrote the book and when we're sharing this information, like we want to give you something that you can take and immediately apply on the job site right away. Like, no theoretical, no, you got to go invest in this technology or you got to buy all this stuff. Like, no, you can just like, here's something that you can go do tomorrow.
You should be able to start this with 0 cost. And that was even to build off of what Keyan was saying there. Like, our hope was that the guys and gals would read the story, but even knowing like our demographic in the industry, like, shit, let's just give them the cliff notes at the back of the book. Like, let's just put all of the content that we were trying to deliver around the implementation of the tools and methodologies, just put in the playbook. And let's just fast forward. And if they want to know, okay, what are the 7 things I need to know to go have an effective daily huddle? Boom, here they are. Play 1 in the playbook. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, got that down. Okay, what do I need to talk about in the daily huddle? Okay, visual communication. Here's what you need to talk about. What are you working on? Where are they working? How many guys do you got? What are your deliveries? What are your constraints? Like, feed the information through there. And that was the whole premise, because we wanted everything to be tangible. We wanted everything that they could read one chapter before even moving on to the next chapter. Okay, great. Now I got 5 things that I can go try out on my job site on Monday morning to try to get a little bit better. And that's kind of the filter that we put everything through in regards to the content and how we try to roll it out.
And exactly what you're talking about. After they read a chapter, they're now equipped to go do something. What advice would you give folks that feel like they need to take the book with them and make sure they do it perfectly? Otherwise, they're failing.
The biggest thing I could even start even in that conversation realm is probably put the book down, like read the first chapter, find what you want to do, and then start small. And it's like, and that's one of the reasons why I think I actually listened to y'all's collabo session number 6 on the drive over this morning, and y'all hit on it. You nailed it in that discussion about Last Planner System. Like, they try to eat the whole thing at one time, and it's no wonder why Last Planner System leaves such a bad taste in the mouths of those who tried it and it failed. And like, oh, that doesn't work. Let's go back to the way we were doing it. You got to start small. You got to get a little bit of momentum, and you got to show the value add to yourself and your team before you're ready to move on to the next thing. Like if you're not proving that system or tool is creating value, then there's no justification for even taking it any further. So start small. Think about your audience. Think about your team. Ask questions, and find out what's going to make the most value for them. We like to think of this as kind of like the Betty Crocker recipe. Like try this recipe first. Like give this the first shot.
Hey, real quick.
Construction is one of the only industries that's become less productive over the past 6 decades. 60% of construction job cost is labor. 80% of construction projects are over budget. 60% aren't on time. Struxy replaces paper timesheets and manual data entry with easy-to-use software. How much are inefficient job sites costing you? One of our customers estimates they'll save millions per year with Struxy. Read the case study at our website, struxy.com. That's STRUXI.com. Software for hard work. You can also visit us at World of Concrete in Las Vegas come January.
At Skiles Group, we use lean boards. Those lean boards have a version number on them. Everybody operates off version 1. Then we start meeting as groups, start to see, is there a better way to do things? And then if we all agree, we all update the standard and go to version 2. Here's my compass to our people. If it adds value, that's lean. If somebody tells you to do something that's lean and it's not adding any value, then that's not lean. And you should stop doing it. We're not trying to check boxes here. It's all about the compass of value, waste. And if it's not adding value, then either you're doing it wrong or you don't need to be doing it. And it's that simple. Yep. And for us, like I like to empower our people, like they'll know, like the field will know. The field will know. They come to a daily huddle and the superintendent is 80% presenting and 20% facilitating, like, and they don't get to talk as much and this and that. Yeah, they'll get a little bit of value and maybe they come and they participate. But if the superintendent is 80% facilitating and, 20% telling, and now they're engaged, this and that, like they're going to see the value and then they'll want to come. And so just that's the compass. But I totally agree with Joe. Start small. And people are like, well, how long should I wait? It's like, who knows? Wait a year. What are you trying to accomplish? If you're trying to build your firm up to be a firm that is a true leader in implementation of lean and changing the industry and pushing the needle, like every project in your entire firm should have a huddle. Every project should be using visual communication. Every project should be managing constraints. You get there? Okay. Now let's start with last planner system. Now let's start trying to implement full planning. You know how it is. A lot of people like to pick and choose,
They do. Everyone wants to shop off of the a la carte menu.
Yeah.
And they don't want to trust the chef that spent decades creating their craft and making that food just, especially burritos, just so delicious.
Oh, man, you're making me hungry.
We'll have to all get some breakfast burritos soon. I think one of the things that you said, Keyan, earlier, and Joe was reacting to it as well, is that there has been a lot of groundwork done in this area, and people forget in lean that it didn't start in academia. It started in real companies, people solving real business problems. And from my perspective, we're on the same page of what lean is. Like you just said now, if it adds value for you, that's lean. And for me, if you're learning and it changes what you do tomorrow to make you better, because I'm better by your standard, not by mine, better by your standard. To me, that's lean. A learning and adaptive mindset is all I'm looking for in anybody that's hungry and wants to start with something. And I completely agree. We have a lot of firms that are just anti last planner system. And if they are, it's probably for a good reason, because somebody came in or they saw something that was like overly complicated. Anybody can actually take something simple and make it complicated and complex. That's not a mark of genius. And so you want to make it so that if you can't talk to people in conversation and improve how you deliver your job, you probably don't know enough yet. And that's okay. Start, like Joe said, start exactly where you are. If you haven't ever asked, are there things holding you up as a superintendent or as a foreman running crews? If you've never asked your crew, why can't we do this thing as planned?
Yeah.
That's the first place to start, asking the question. And then you'll build capacity from there. And then I completely agree with Jesse. If you're a trade partner and you have someone that knows how to do this, use them to help you and do it whether the GC does it or not. Yeah. I'm starting to know more. I know more trade partners now than GC companies that do pool planning when the GC doesn't. That's becoming a thing. And GCs, if you're listening out there, trade partners make real money, whereas we make pennies on the dollar.
Oh, love it.
What I did not expect would happen when we wrote the book was that superintendents across the country would send me pictures via LinkedIn of their Elmo dolls on their job site. That's been a little creepy. I appreciate it, but I get a lot of that. Yeah, I get a lot of that. And so that's been fun. I think, for the most part, the feedback that I've gotten around the book has been all positive, even from people that I've learned a lot from and respect that are in key positions, kind of like you, Felipe, in your firm, to where I think when they first read it, they were like, we don't actually do it the way you describe. But then once their superintendents read it and it was like the first resource that they were like, oh, this is good, then it was like, yeah, let's open it up. We knew we wanted to write this book. We knew we wanted to share this journey. We knew we wanted to give back. But I don't know that we put much thought into be like what it would be like afterward. It was just something that we thought we needed to do,
I mean, I'll be straight up. I'll be honest. Like, I thought when we rolled it out, we were going to be presenting it at Congress, and we were going to be, distributing it at AGC convention in March of 2020. But I mean, if I'm being completely transparent, I thought it was pretty much going to peak at that, maybe like, another 1,000 or 2 copies after that. But I never would have thought we would have sold 12,000 copies in the time that we did. I didn't think the demand or the hunger for that was that significant. Just the validation of like, guys, what you're describing in the book, I mean, like, that's like my day to day. Like, you just described my current state. You just described the headaches that I have. And I think because of that, it just cracks that door open and it gets those guys and gals so interested to thirst for more and to want to try to solve their issues and to feel empowered to solve their issues. And to me, that's been probably like the biggest aha, but also at the same time, it's been the most rewarding thing because it's just that validation and hearing that feedback that we are making people's lives better. We are allowing them to elevate up. They still may be working a lot. Lean isn't a silver bullet that's, you're magically only going to work 40 hours now because you're running lean and last planner system. But you're going to stop being reactive. You're going to stop putting out, like, just chasing around the job site all day long, putting out fires. And the work that you are going to be doing is going to be more meaningful. You're going to be elevating up. You're going to be looking for constraints before they come in and they torpedo you. You're going to be able to plan and to sequence and to phase and to actually provide a reliable workflow to your project and to provide flow. And that work is so much more meaningful and enjoyable. And in turn, your mental health's going to be better. You're going to be getting home earlier. It's just going to be a more enjoyable situation. And to me, that's been the biggest aha.
Thank you so much, guys. I love both of those. Well, let's talk about CPM.
Okay, here we go.
All right, buckle up. Hope you got another hour.
All right, I'm going to flex it right now. Critical path method scheduling. It's World War I technology developed by Henry Gantt back in the early 1900s, late 1800s. From all what I can see, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, it's never worked in construction.
This is an interesting conversation. So I don't know.
When I mean it's never worked, I mean for something to work, it should deliver what it promises.
Yeah.
And that's when it doesn't deliver, and if you have to go through heroics and acrobatics and superhuman things to make that thing work, it doesn't work. That's what I'm saying.
This is where I'll start. and I don't know that I'll get too deep, but this is where I'll start. It's two things, right? So number one is, like, for me, I feel like me and Joe are in the business of like, we're converting people to lean. And in our journey with it, that's not necessarily a topic that I want to engage with, in that it's the standard. In a lot of ways, it's contractual. There'd be so much undoing in the way that getting people to think in a totally different mindset, that's not a fight that I ever want to get into. I perfectly like to teach in the way that, like in chapter 6, where your pull plan session gets implemented back into your master schedule. If you built in some time, that time is team float. If you're going over, you look for a different way to re-pull. Otherwise, you're looking for an opportunity to pull back in a different milestone. But in my experience, trying to have that conversation is part of the way that I would teach the system. Like, I'm turning way too many people off and I don't want to have it. Now, on the flip side of that, no trade partner foreman is walking around the job with the Gantt schedule, making like, that's not how they put work into place. Okay. And so, like, I've been in many debate, Joe knows, like even just yesterday, many debate of like, when the people want to go really hard on me on the Gantt, I'm like, listen, hey, record keeping, tracking, making sure that the project's on path at a high level, a macro level, absolutely. But if you think you issuing, a 20-page schedule to the field is how they're actually building the job, like, you're out of your mind. Number two, like, I challenge anybody, even in the best, like Jesse, when you were a foreman in the field, and I'm the superintendent, if I come to you and say, hey, do you know the date that your plumbing in wall is due? I'm not going to lie, 9 times out of 10, they don't. As a foreman, they got the men that they need, they got the materials, and they're pushing as hard as they can to get done. Like, there's no necessary, the superintendent's talking dates, but I could go walk any job site, ask the concrete, hey, do you know the date your foundation is supposed to be due? They don't. Try it. They don't. 90% of them don't. And so, going back to that, to me, they should. That should be something that's talked about when we talk about weekly work planning. Those mini milestones, those dates, everybody needs to feel that scoreboard, that pressure. We're a team. We got to get through the next phase. And so you're never going to hear me argue, Felipe, around implementing last planner versus Gantt and this and that, and actually how things get built in the field. Where I won't go is that, hey, if you want to use your Gantt schedule to make sure that your critical path shows if you're on track or not, and you're looking at a high macro level throughout your job, and that's what you have to update as part of your agreement, like, hey, you're not going to hear me like try to convince you differently in an effort to that's what turns you off to implementing lean. So I hope that's not a BS answer for you.
That's not a BS answer. You started with the BS answer, but then you saved yourself. So thank God. Thank God. I was getting worried that I was going to have to cut all of that answer out, and now it actually gets to stay in the final cut.
I'll tell you, Felipe, you talk to a lot of people in our industry. That's a very touchy subject. And I've seen a lot of people that if they feel like that's what lean or last planner is about, you just turn them right off. And I just don't think that's a conversation that we need to have right now. I think the conversation we need to have is around building culture, getting more value back in our day, implementing some of these things that are easy to do, that get more value, that get people thinking in a different way. And then as that needle starts to push and things start to shift, hey, have at it.
I agree and somewhat disagree. So
That's good.
I myself, Keyan, I talked to a lot of people in the industry, and I've been on academic research committee efforts to come to just telling the industry what are the different type of collaborative scheduling methodologies we use. And in that research funded by CII, and included people that make a living just doing project controls or scheduling. And we even had people that have written books on CPM scheduling. And we have people that advise large companies, large software companies that make a full-time living delivering CPM scheduling software to the industry that's used everywhere on planet Earth. And we did have some of those tough conversations. And Keyan, I think those conversations are worth having, but I agree with you that that's not going to get people convinced. And I think we all agree, like from the builder's perspective, and the same is true for people in support functions and also in executives. Like at the end of the day, we need to build something. And so we can have some healthy debate and dialogue on what works and what doesn't. And I want the people that make their living doing those things in support I'm not trying to eliminate your job. I'm not. It has its place. And like you said, some of these things are contractual and standard. But what I don't want to do is to get over-reliant on things that don't really function in a way that benefits the people trying to put the work in place. I want to always support the people building it. And the reason I do that is because the clients that we build for need these things. That's the whole reason that we're even coming together, is because there's a need. And the need is not so that Joe can just build like his 55th hospital. The need is because that hospital is going to treat people that need care and need to come back to health. In the case of Joe, because he does a lot of hospitals. And so that's where I'm coming at it, Keyan.
Yeah, well, I'll say this, Felipe. I mean, that's why we need people like you in our industry. I mean, continuing to push the needle and to already be thinking that far ahead, to have these kind of conversations and to be doing this kind of research. And so again, you're not going to hear me disagree with that. I think we do need people like you that are trying to push the next phase of what this could be. So you're not going to hear me argue with that.
Yeah, and I've had, and Jesse has witnessed it on LinkedIn, people have come after me on the CPM debate and on Scrum as well, because Scrum gets a lot of whiplash too, because it's also a pull framework, very similar to LPS. And I'll go back and forth with people respectfully, and I'll even have to call people on the phone. I've had conversations with people that some of my friends have blocked from posting on LinkedIn, and I've given them my cell phone, and we've had like a 10-minute or a half-hour conversation. And at the end of it, Keyan, we both understand each other better. And I've made so many more friends that way. Then I don't tell people like what they're doing is wrong. And in our company, when we developed our LPS, we brought on some chief schedulers from around the organization and some other scheduling managers to make sure that this was something that works with how they're working now. So we're not jumping, like, to go back to what you said about Steve Harvey, like we're going to jump, but we're not going to jump so far that we fall down and die.
Yeah.
We're going to jump and still make some progress. So what do you say to CPM, Joe? Because you probably F9 at least a couple times a day.
I mean, at high level, I agree and take the stance of where Keyan was headed. There was something that y'all said on your last podcast. I think it was Jesse that was like CPM and Last Planner System were like the parents who got a divorce and they've been separated for 5 years and now everyone's trying to get them back together. I chuckled at that one. To me, they both have their place and they both serve their purpose. If anything, if I see them, like when I visually try to see them, I see them working in parallel. They're not something that works like this in unison. They are two independent tools that are doing two different functions, serving two different functions. To me, when that information, you got to capture that information from the pool. And to Keyan's point, the easiest way to do that is tying that back and putting it into your CPM. Or at least that's one way to do it, and that's one way that we talk about it. But Felipe, to your point, that's not the one. To me, that's not the one-for-one going through the schedule, making sure that it all ties back. To me, that's flipping in a hammock or throwing in there under that milestone. Hey, here's the milestone. Here's what was in the CPM. But here's like the validated plan that we just did from the pool plan, and we're just bringing it back in here so we don't lose that great information, coordination, collaboration, handoff, make-ready constraints that we just all figured out over the last 2.5 hours, so it has a place to live. Like, That's the biggest waste around pool planning, right? Like you do this awesome pool plan, and then it's like, crap, what do we do? Like, what do we do with all this great information? Because then it's like waste, because then you got to go back and try to find a place for that to live. Unless you're using some type of like touch plan or Refine My Site or like a software that's capturing for that in real time. So high level, they don't integrate fully. They are two different tools that work in unison, that support each other, that run in parallel, but you can't really compare. They can't be fully integrated. They each
So it's
serve-
like Jesse said, it's like a divorced parents, but it was a mutual separation. And
yeah, kind of like, yeah, that was a pretty good way of saying that. It stood with me. I remembered it like as soon as I was like, man, that's okay.
they keep it cool for the kids.
To me, this is really good lean nerd guru talk, right? Let's just think about how a schedule actually works, right? In my role, if I'm going after a project, either the client's telling me how many months the job is in the RFP that comes out in the first place, or, if we ever have to go after a bid, which we don't do a lot of, but if we do, the drawings come out, we get them out, probably some guy in my role builds the schedule in, a couple hours based on the drawings we get. We probably kick that to the trade partners with a week left before their bids due. And, then the superintendent takes it and says, oh, the ops guy made it. This must be the schedule for the job. And he's pushing my beautiful schedule where everything starts on Monday and ends on Friday, and they're building with it. Okay, and I'm being facetious here. But how do the trades actually plan their work? Well, number one, they build in the amount of man hours they think it's going to take to do the job. So if they think it's going to take 10,000 man hours and it takes 8, well, guess what? They make more money. If it takes 12, they lose money. So I rather debate in conversations around, do you really think your trade partners are trying to hold you up? Or do you really think that they're, intentionally not wanting to make money? No, they want to beat the man hours they have. And I like to have the conversations around like, okay, in a pool plan, if somebody's sandbagging on time, like ask them to see if their estimator will print out how many man hours they have in the job. They may actually look at the durations that they give you in the pool plan. And so there's so much other conversation in regards to how to get last planner system to actually work right and how to have these conversations and the dysfunction of how we even schedule in our industry in the first place. That, I think there's a lot of room for boots on the ground to have these kind of conversations, to teach in that way, and then have a certain portion of the lean leaders in our industry trying to push the needle of what it should be. And so I feel like this conversation is a good complement of two different scenarios.
When it comes to the conversation about CPM and last planner system, when people start that conversation around me, I'm like, I'm out. Like, we are so far away from having to worry about that shit. Like, we got a culture respect problem in our industry, period. Like, let's focus there, and then we can jerk around with the damn keyboard. Like, we got bigger. We got bigger.
Jesse, we went back and forth. Like, should we use the word trade partner? I haven't used the word subcontractor in years. We're using the word trade partner. But in the beginning of the book, it's like, all right, if we start calling them trade partners in chapter 1, like half the supers are going to be like, not even know what the hell we're talking about. That's our audience.
Yep.
Okay. And so we intentionally tried to trigger without turning you off completely. We had to play certain things safe, and then certain things, it was intentional when Sam's like, my schedule, like that's very intentional. There was so much of that. It was, I've been a part of a lot of book clubs, me and Joe, and different companies that have read the book, have asked us to come spend some time, and even in our own firms. But it's interesting. Like, I've never seen anybody go like pick up on the nuance that deep, and I'm glad. Like, I think that conversation needed to be had because there was just a lot of that was intentional. Like, when Sam, in one of the chapters, when like Sam, he stayed up too late watching the game. He procrastinated on building the crib for their new baby. His PM happened to be on vacation that week. he forgot his phone. Like, that's a real person's day sometimes in our business. And then for him to have the compiling issues of the firefighting that was going on with all the, like, that's what happens. Like, that's just the way it is. And people are human, and the way they react is going to be human, especially on a job site. And so it's good that you felt that way. Like, that was the intent.
Yeah, my favorite part when Jesse got triggered is when they were going to write a letter to their office or call their office, and he's like, "Well, you better CC my mom on the email."
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, it's funny. Like, I think I remember, like, me and Joe, like, I mean, we sat so long, so many, just typing and laughing and writing, and like, I just remember, I remember being like, oh yeah, and tell him he's gonna like they're gonna put him in default or something. Like, we had that conversation because that's the conversations we had. That's how a general contractor thinks.
To us, it was so important for Alan to be the character dropping the knowledge onto Sam, who was the younger demographic, because I think that's another significant challenge that we're facing in our industry today, because we're at a really kind of weird, pivotal time where we've had all these amazing leaders. I don't even like saying the term old school, because it's those leaders and the wisdom and the understanding and what they have made them unbelievable, amazing builders. But the game's changed. Yeah. Like, it's not them that's changed. It's the current state of this freaking industry. Like, it's the design. It's the skilled trades and the lack of. It's just the trades in general. It's the communication styles. It's the trade partners and just you guys having to manage the skilled labor and just not having the time to plan and get into the weeds. And most of the time you're ripped off of one job and thrown onto another and you don't know what's going on. And, because of that, it's just tough for what I feel like a younger, less inexperienced, either a project engineer, APM, superintendent, to like bring these ideas and topics up to some of these more senior leaders who are like, why do we need to change what we're doing here? Because what I've been doing has been working. I've been with my company 30 years, made my owner a bunch of money. The client asked for me by name, like, what I'm doing is not broken. And we just felt it was important to show Alan being the one dropping that knowledge, to not alienate that specific demographic and breathe them into the story and have them engaged into the discussion and just get them there in the first place. Because it is something as an industry, we got some work cut out for us, and it's going to be a hurdle that we're going to be trying to manage for a long time.
Yeah, it couldn't just be some hotshot young superintendent trying to school everybody on how to do this. Like, no one would have. I mean, I'm not saying that's not what happens in a lot of companies. It's usually a younger somebody trying that hadn't been burnt so many times, that hadn't been so dated, that's trying to do something new. But like, that's not fully our audience. Our audience is to try to help those folks. And that's what, like Joe said, man, Sam had to be the junior guy. Alan, the sensei, had to be the older guy, and he had to drop the knowledge in a way that like he's just not spoon feeding it. Like, Sam had to learn it.
If you can get one of those trade or field leaders from your firm, if you're a GC, one of those superintendents with some gray in their beard, with some knowledge, with some wisdom, who traditionally you might consider that old school guy, and you can have one of those leaders be your lean champion, watch out.
Oh, yeah.
Because the sky's going to be the limit, because you're going to see the momentum and the dynamic change within your firm if you can get those type of leaders bought in, and they're the ones carrying the torch, that have that seniority and have that just that charisma and dynamic that everyone else is going to follow and get behind. It's going to be a game changer for your firm. So don't just think of pushing those guys out. Like, you need to bring those guys in. Like, those are going to be the guys that are going to take you to the next level still.
One of our senior superintendent, Buddy Brumley, has got some posts in there, and he's a guy that's a more seasoned guy in our industry. And man, when the light bulb came off for him and he became our champion, I mean, it helped us scale so much. And so, like Joe said, you really got to find your champions within your firm.
Even if you're in a small firm of just 6 superintendents, or if you're in a big company with over 200 superintendents, that is true. Your influencers are sometimes the older, more seasoned people, and sometimes they could be in the middle as well. And there are a couple examples of some young hotshot superstars, but the industry has so much momentum and habits baked in. I was talking to a PE this week, and he said, like, I actually learned last planner system in college, and then I came to work in the industry, and I couldn't talk about it. And he said it wasn't. He's like 3 years went by, and the next thing I know is like you're sharing something, and we're going through something, and he's like, I'd already done this before, and I was like, well, you didn't even speak up in that moment. To say that you'd even had some experience. And I was like, that's what I'm fighting against. I'm fighting it where we can't even let those people speak up.
I remember giving a presentation at Texas A&M just about lean. This was probably before the book, but I was talking about a material delivery board. Like on our projects, we have a material delivery board. It tracks, what's being delivered, when, what type of truck is it coming in, how is it going to come off the truck, all those kind of things. And I'm explaining this like as part of visual communication to this group of students. And when I give this presentation in industry, like people are like, yeah, that's a good idea. We used to do that in the past, or tracking hook time. And like I see people like, that's great. We got to do that. And I see the light bulbs come on. In the classroom setting, like blank faces. Finally, this kid raises his hand. He's like, hey, I started to ask. He's like, and don't take this the wrong way, but it really doesn't sound that like groundbreaking. He's like, why wouldn't you guys just have a material delivery board anyway? And like, I was like, triggered. I was like, dude, you haven't been jaded by the dysfunction in our industry. Like, we don't have time to think about common sense. Like, we're too busy chasing our ass. Like, and so it's like, I share that story all the time because it's so funny, because it's like when you're firefighting all day long, dealing with issues, people issues, project issues, all that kind of stuff, we've become so conditioned to the dysfunction. We don't even know what's supposed to be there or not. And, just, it's so funny, you bringing up a kid coming out of school and saying, man, I learned this, and then this wasn't what I experienced when I got here, and he almost forgot about it, or they wasn't. And I get it. I get it. I see it.
It is a very intense industry, and you can be dropped in on a magical project headed to litigation, and you're going to have a completely different experience than someone going on a job where you've negotiated with the client and the client just loves you, and they're naming, they're dropping Joe's name, and they're just negotiating the job directly based on relationship. Those are completely different things. Yeah,
that's two sides of the spectrum.
I wouldn't change anything in the book. The fact that it triggers so many people at so many different levels means you did it right. And I think the Lean blog, where you're sharing stories from different voices in the industry, is critically important. I'll share something. Had a young project engineer that doesn't even work in our organization contacted me through LinkedIn, and they said, I read this thing on the Lean Builder, and I've heard you talking about this, and we want to start doing this. What do I need to do? And so I went to the same article that someone had posted on your site, and we just closed a couple of gaps and said, go do it and be patient with yourself. It's not going to be perfect the first time. A lot of people in our industry talk themselves out of trying something because it's not going to be exactly perfect. Yeah. I said the best thing you can do, and when you stand up, if your superintendent's going to make you stand up and facilitate this, tell the tradespeople it's your first time and that you would appreciate them to help you. They will help you.
Keyan, Joe, both of you guys have sent us feedback about one of the episodes you listen and the dumb shit that comes out of my mouth. And I'm like, oh, okay, good. I didn't piss them off. Like, it's actually like pretty damn awesome to get feedback from you guys, and having the impact and the fingerprint that y'all are going to leave in the industry.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's a two-way street on our end as well, the platform, you guys. So we're here for y'all as well, and thank you. Yeah, no,
likewise. Very humbling to hear that from both of you. I think the two things that I would have in closing is, one, when Joe and I wrote this book, like I remember telling Joe that I hope in like 3 to 4 years' time, there's like a handful of books written by true practitioners or something that if anybody comes to us, it's like, here, read this or listen to this. And so what you guys are doing with your podcast, I can't even imagine the amount of time and effort that takes, all in the effort to give back to the industry. Man, keep up the good fight. This is what's needed. I've never been more excited about the potential of what could be changing in our industry as I am right now. The second thing, and I hate to keep the rumors going, but I can't confirm or deny that Alan Phillips was named after Felipe. So the rumors are still out there. I can't confirm or deny that. No comment.
I forgot all of
Oh my God,
that.
Keyan.
I can't believe you brought that up. That's
You just made my day, Keyan. Thank you so much.
That's good.
Very special thanks to my guests. I'm Felipe Engineer-Manriquez. The EBFC show is created by Felipe and produced by a passion to build easier and better. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Let's go build.